just to get one property off the ground can be tremendous. But that next property that you do, you've done all that work, so you don't need to go find a new bank or a new attorney or a new insurance company. You've already got those. So it's a little easier the second time, and then it's a little easier the third time. And then that's where the locomotive is very hard to start, but it's also very hard it's got a lot of momentum once it gets going.
My name is Ashish, and in 2020, I have a goal to tell 100 stories. In order for me to do that, I started a production company called Storyventure. Go to growwithstory.com and follow the journey alongside me. So we've known each other for a couple of years now. So when I first moved to Lafayette, I came across you through Faith Church because you were a deacon there. So what are you doing nowadays?
Currently, I'm with Ironmen Properties. We are a developer of multifamily housing, and we stay focused. We try to stay focused within like a 2-hour drive of Lafayette. Neither of us, Joe Blake, my business partner, and I, neither of us like to be away from home for very long. So that was kind of a boundary that we set early on, and we've fortunately been able to stick to that.
And so, tell me your journey up to Ironmen Properties. Where did this all start?
Wow. Okay. So back in, I think, about 2003, a friend of mine had invested in a couple of duplexes, and he used a builder, actually at Faith Church, to build those duplexes. And it was an investment, a retirement type of thing. And it was intriguing to me because that was shortly after I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so that was my start of really thinking about real estate from the passive income standpoint and wanting to have some means of generating income without, while I sleep, as Robert Kiyosaki would talk about, are you working for your money or is your money working for you? And so that was intriguing to me. And so this friend of mine who had acquired a couple of duplexes using a builder at church, that got me, I was intrigued by that. And so using the income of my full-time job, I was able to invest in a couple of duplexes the same way that he did. And that, again, just a lot of things resonated with what I had read in the book. And that was fun. It was fun too. So from there, over the next 7 years, up until 2010, I had both my full-time job. This was at Pitney Bowes. I was heading up the sales team there for one of their divisions. And so I had a lot of, I'll call it airplane time. So I was flying across the country, and that afforded me the time to do a lot of reading. And so I kind of viewed myself as having 2 full-time jobs. One was for the real estate, learning about that, while still my day job, if you will. And so I got to the point where with the downturn of the economy in 2008, 2009, I had taken what I had learned up to that point, and real estate was cheap back then. And so my wife, Sally, and I decided to do a little bit more heavy investing at that point. And then in 2010, an opportunity came along that I was able to leave my full-time job. They were very generous to me. They were downsizing, and they were very gracious in putting together a package where I was able to leave. And it was a great day because it allowed me to do my dream job, and that was to focus on real estate. And then in 2013, Joe Blake and I, while we were, interestingly enough, we were training for an Ironman competition. We had a lot of time on the bike together, a lot of time running together, and he was also early in his real estate investing career. He had a full-time job as well. And so we had started brainstorming about what it might look like if we partnered on a larger project than either of us had ever done before. And so it was during that training that we decided to partner and buy a project. It was down in Lebanon. It was a senior apartment building that had gone back to the bank, and so we were able to acquire that. So that was in 2013, and then over the course of the last 6 years, we were able to take that project that was 59 units. We kept adding units to that existing building. And then we acquired a couple of lots, adjacent lots, and built our first new buildings. That was predominantly using Joe's skill sets because that's his background as a structural engineer. And then we kind of have a saying that Joe builds them and then I fill them because that's where our skills align. Is he's with the development, I'm with more of the operations side. So that was in 2013 up to 2000. Actually, we recently just sold that property, so that was a very good project over the last several years. And now we are. Since then, we've built a project in Frankfort, Indiana, and then we've acquired one in Crawfordsville, and then now we're looking to do a nice project here locally in Lafayette. So there we are.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I recently heard about the local project that you were doing, and I want to get to that at some point, but you touched on so many things that I want to talk about. So the first one is the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You're actually the reason I read the book, and I started thinking about, the concept of, real estate and being smarter about investments. And so talk to me more about that book.
Yeah, so that book really, I had never really even heard the term passive income before. For me, the way you made money was you had a job. You put in your time at the job and you got a paycheck for that. And so the concept of, and then investing to me at that time was, buying some stocks and hopefully those stocks go up in value and you can make some money that way. But never understanding what true passive income was. And that book helped me understand what it's also called the cash flow quadrant. You have the J for the job, you have the I for the investor, you have the S for the self-employed, and then you have the B quadrant for the business owner. And so the J and the S were on the left half of the grid, and then the B and the I were on the right half of the grid. And the B and the I were more the passive. That's where your money's working for you while you sleep, okay? On the other half, the J and the S, the job or the self-employed, you have to work for your money. So that was really, and then real estate for me seemed like I'm not very smart, so inventing something and being a business owner, having patents, things like that, that was not going to be me. Running some large business, I just didn't see myself doing that. But what I could see myself doing was, if you will, the game of Monopoly, where you buy a house, you buy another house, you buy another house, and then you buy that fourth green house, and then you trade them in for a red hotel type of thing. So Robert Kiyosaki uses that analogy a lot. But that resonated with me, and so that's the path I chose based on that book.
So what was the first thing you did once you read that book, and between that and purchasing your first property?
By schooling, I'm an engineer. I have an electrical engineering degree, and so I was probably the worst person when it came to analysis paralysis. So, I think I read that book in like 2001, and it wasn't until 2003 before I acquired my first property. I was scared. I read a lot. After that book, I read a lot of his books, and I just could not see myself taking that first step to acquiring my first property. I wish I would have done it a lot sooner. Looking back, it wasn't that hard to do, and but I think a lot of people would say things like that. So I did a lot of reading between the time I first read that book and actually doing the first property.
Yeah. So your first property that you ended up getting, what did that look like? Talk to me about the difficulty, with everything there.
Well, when people ask me, the answer I give them is like, "How did you find your first property?" And I have a saying, it's 110-4-1 rule. And that means, and again, it's 110-4-1. So I look at 100 properties to be interested in 10, to put an offer on 4, to get 1. So it's a lot of work, but and through the reading, and I truly believe this, is that when you make your money when you buy a property, not when you sell. And that's because you buy a really good property at a really good price, and that takes a lot of work. You can sell a property pretty easily. If you want to sell it really quick, it's cheap, right? I mean, that's how you sell something really quickly. But so doing the homework and then finding this builder that was building, like I mentioned earlier, a good friend of mine had bought a couple duplexes, and so I inquired about those. And one thing that was different back then from today is that in the early 2000s, leading up to the housing bubble, if you will, banks would loan money on appraised value, not necessarily on what it cost.
Okay.
So if a property appraised high enough, you could get a loan for very close to the entire purchase price. So literally no money down. That's where that phrase came from, is no money down, because banks would do that. They don't do that anymore. But I was, now that's also the reason they don't do it, is because it's very risky. And I remember my first couple of properties, there was risk involved. The reason the bank was willing to loan the money was because I had a full-time job. And I'm very thankful I kept that full-time job while I got started, because, if you have a couple of vacants, the mortgage payment still has to be paid. All the bills still have to be paid. And if you have no one living in there, you need that backup. You need that reserve. So, and when the bank borrows you the money for the entire house, your payments are higher. So those hurt a little bit more if you have to pay those out of pocket. So there was a few times where it was a bit scary, because the income, if we had some vacants, was there. But like a locomotive, the amount of effort and energy to start something was just tremendous. The amount of reading, the amount of learning, the amount of working with an accountant, working with an attorney, working with just vendors, whether it's a maintenance person, whether it's a property management company, whether it's finding unless I want to go mow the yards, finding a lawn care company, it's all that work to find all those different vendors. That's just to get one property off the ground can be tremendous. But that next property that you do, you've done all that work, so you don't need to go find a new bank or a new attorney or a new insurance company. You've already got those. So it's a little easier the second time, and then it's a little easier the third time. And then that's where the locomotive is very hard to start, but it's also very hard to, it's got a lot of momentum once it gets going.
You mentioned doing an Ironman. I know very little about Ironman, the Ironman competition. So what is it?
So there are various levels of Ironman competition, starting with, there might be more than this, but as far as what I know, there's the sprint, and that is a number of laps in the pool, usually. It might be, and I don't remember the yardage, but it's probably a half a mile in the pool, and I know I have that wrong. But then you get out of the pool and you ride a bike for, I think 12 miles or something like that, and then you run a 5K, and that's a sprint. Then the next level up is an Olympic triathlon, and that's 0.9 miles swim, and that's like a 28-mile bike, and then it's a 10K run, so 6.2 miles, somewhere around in there. And then from there, there's what's called a triathlon, or a half Ironman, and that is a 1.2-mile swim, followed by a 56-mile bike, followed by a half marathon run, a 13.1-mile run. And then a full Ironman is double that. So it'd be a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon 26.2-mile run. So, and I've never done one of those. I've done several halves, triathlons, and then a sprint, and then the Olympic. So.
And have you always been interested in like competitive sports like that?
No.
Okay. So
No.
what got you into it?
I had ran a couple of half marathons, and I liked that. And actually, what it was is it was our pastor, Pastor Steve Vyers. I'll never forget. It was in the parking lot, and it was right after the Indy half marathon, and we were passing each other in the parking lot, and he knew that I'd ran that, and he congratulated me for running that, and he said, "Hey, you should join us. We're training for a half marathon." And I just remember saying, no, it's not me. You know, I barely survived the half marathon. But yeah, his encouragement just, I thought I'd try it out. I'd never rode a bike very far. In fact, I borrowed a bike for the first couple of training sessions. And, you know, I think it was just hanging around a number of good guys and training with them that was encouraging to me. On a lot of levels, not only physical, but just challenged me just to be a better father, better person, better husband, better citizen. Just, you know, and it's great to hang out with guys from your church that can grow you physically as well as spiritually.
Yeah, that is incredible. I've heard this quote, and I think it's very true. The older I get, it's you are the average of the 5 people you're around. You've probably heard that before, yeah. And it is very true, because you start picking up from, you know, their traits, their, you know, whatever it is. If it's you know, if they like MMA, you'll like MMA, right? And so, yeah. Okay, so from the Ironman competitions that you're a part of, you met Joe Blake through that. Okay, and so talk to me about Joe Blake and your partnership with him to start Ironman Properties.
So, first of all, where did the name of the company come from? I mean, part of it is because I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but you know, the company was formed from a lot of time in the training for the Ironman competition. And then again, because of our faith, our common, you know, we're both Christians, and we value that. We value that a lot, and we both, very quickly settled on the verse Proverbs 27:17, which is, just as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. And that was very important to us as we were getting in, started to spend a lot of time together and doing business together. We wanted to make sure that it was much more about the business itself. It was about holding each other accountable in all aspects of our life. And, I really strongly feel I got the better end of that deal, because I really view my partner as sharpening me a lot more than I sharpen him. But that's how the name came about. So we, during the training, we had this opportunity to acquire this property down in Lebanon, Indiana. But at that time, we were both doing our own thing. And so this was a kind of a small part of what we were doing. But I think just the working together on that, we both enjoyed it, worked very well for us. We began to trust each other a lot, and we began to talk more. And the success of that, by God's grace, was what helped us both to recognize the value in working more and more together. So that's how that got started.
One thing I want to expand on is, what are you looking for when you are looking to partner up with someone in business? Just because you've been doing this with Joe for a long time, what about that worked for you?
Yeah, Joe and I have had many conversations where we basically tell the other person, look, if this isn't working out for you, you're not going to hurt my feelings. And because we didn't know, you can do a project together and really like it and decide to do another one, but life gets in the way and things change. So we always wanted to make sure that it was good for both people. I mean, it has to be a very good thing for both partners. Dave Ramsey, I am a big fan of Dave Ramsey, and he'll tell you that partnerships are sinking ships. That that it's very difficult to have a partnership, and I think that I've been very blessed to have a partner that we're very like-minded, which is very helpful. But Joe does things differently than I do things, and I don't think we wouldn't want to be exactly the same. I've heard it said, if you're both alike, one of you is not needed. That's just the way it is. So, I think at the core, though, our beliefs are very similar, and we view what does integrity look like the same. We view what good character qualities are. Those are similar. So the values, what are our values? And as long as those are the same, I think the business is a lot easier. If any one of those are different, then the business part's going to be different. It's going to be harder. So I think when looking for a business partner, knowing about real estate in our case, being confident that your partner knows enough about the business is important. But I think a lot more important is when you're around that person, are you glad to be around that person, right? Does that person make you a better person? Does that person encourage you? Does that person, are they going to hold you accountable? So I think that's a lot more important than the business part itself.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So is the structure of Ironman Properties today the same as when you guys first started it? Because I looked at your website and, it's positioned as an investment opportunity, right? Going into it, did you think that's what you guys were doing?
So the website needs to be changed. We're not actively seeking outside partners because, again, I think the more partners that you have, the more challenging things become. Not to say that that's bad. I mean, a lot of people are very successful with having, a pool of investors, and that's how large projects get done. Is that you bring in lots of capital throughout, but those can get very complicated. Those can get very structured, and you have to. There's a lot of work involved. I mean, those are, you're talking big dollars, and with the more investors you have, the more people you have to answer to. And so, Joe and I just decided that if we could, whenever possible, just keep it as small as possible. So we have sought to acquire or build properties when the market is really hot for selling. Then we will build because it's too expensive to buy something. So we are capable of building properties. So we'll take advantage of that when the time makes sense. When the market is down and buying properties is cheap, then we'll leverage that, and because buying a property might be a lot smarter than building one, depending on the timing. So that's where the business started. I think we thought that we would be a developer for other people, but it takes a lot of time, and we're certainly content with just the few projects that we're doing and not adding to that. And we want to be careful that the business doesn't interfere with the rest of what we value in life.
So with Ironman Properties, what are you guys doing now?
So right at this very moment, we are getting ready to start a project called Anvil 38, which we hope to be a 307 unit property adjacent to Ivy Tech and the brand new YMCA. So we acquired there's about 7.1 acres nestled right there in the back of YMCA and adjacent to Ivy Tech, right off of State Road 38. And we hope to start this summer in June. So right now we're very busy and getting ready, talking to subcontractors, getting plans put together, getting financing put together to kick off hopefully this June.
Oh wow! So that's going to be coming quite soon for you.
Very soon.
So what goes into planning for a project like this?
Well, I think first of all, and Joe does a great job with this, is finding out what the needs are. So, this project started about 3 years ago when we, through just a relationship with David Baith of Ivy Tech, trying to find out what the needs were. And the needs at that time, and they still are today, is that Ivy Tech was looking for ways to benefit the students there, looking for ways to retain students, and that what bubbled to the surface was the need for housing in that area. And so I think how we start a project is we find out what are the needs, and then in addition to that, how can Ironman Properties be a blessing in that, and how can we help fulfill those needs? And so whether it's in Frankfort, which is where we did our last project, we did an apartment building on the courthouse square there. You were there. You helped us with some video work there. That was the first time in 27 years that multifamily had been built in Frankfort, and a lot of people questioned that, I think, but then thankfully a lot more people saw the value in that and believed in it, and it's a successful project today that a lot of people are very thankful for, because if you wanted to work in Frankfort, the newest housing stock was 27 years old, so that was very helpful for Frankfort.
What does a project like that look like when you are first talking to the local government of Frankfort?
So for Frankfort specifically, and this obviously would be different for other locations, but for Frankfort specifically, we met with the mayor there years before we started that project, and we hit it off with Mayor McBarnes there. Just a great young man, really had a heart for the city of Frankfort, really wanted to make Frankfort a better place. And, that energy from him really rubbed off on us. And so what he got excited about, it got us excited. And so talking to him over the course of a year or so on what would this look like, we started to look at areas of Frankfort that were blighted, maybe might be the right word, that just needed to be refreshed. And what we landed on, we had looked at a number of areas of town, but what we landed on was that corner right on the courthouse square. There was a vacant lot there, and then there was 2 old, very underutilized buildings there. And so then the next steps were to acquire those 3 different parcels. And once those were acquired, then had to tear them down and then build a new 4-story building there.
Yeah, that was quite a project for you guys. How long did that take?
1 year.
Okay, well, that's a lot quicker than I thought.
Yeah, well, the first shovels were in the ground actually, I think in June of 2017, late June of 2017, and then we actually moved residents on June 1st of the following year, so actually 11 months.
Wow. So how do you get things moving so quick? It seems very quick to me. The process of me just looking to buy homes as investments has taken probably longer than that. So I'm interested to know how do you move so quick?
Well, it's probably because it appears quick once. When understanding that when you see a bulldozer pull up, think of all the work that's been done prior to that bulldozer pulling up. So, all the architectural drawings had to be done. There's many, many, many meetings with architects and looking at floor plans. And, you think picking out fixtures for your house can take a while. It's the same process. There's many meetings where, we look at the size of bedrooms, we look at the size of the bathrooms, we look at, where's the leasing office going to be, what amenities is the building going to have, what kind of parking. There's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into, and of course you have to keep cost in mind, because unlike your house that you're building for you, this has to make good business sense. So you try to save money where you can without it being viewed as a negative for the property.
Right. And something that I've noticed is you guys stick to the residential properties. Why is that?
Well, I think this is why God created different people. And I have a very close friend who doesn't understand why we do what we do because he views commercial as the way to go. He likes to have a big box and have one tenant in it for a 5-year lease because then he doesn't have to worry about it. He's like, I don't know how you guys deal with, 50 apartments and dealing with 50 people moving in and out. And, my attitude is that, well, when I have a couple of people move out, I have 3 vacants out of 50, that's manageable. When you have one tenant move out, your whole building's empty, So it's just a different way of thinking about it. We just decided that we want to focus on multifamily, residential, and not get into retail. So, for example, in Frankfurt, we had to make the conscious decision to make the whole building, even though it's on the courthouse square, make the whole building residential, even the first floor, which is not typical. Typically, you have retail, restaurants on the first floor, and then apartments above. But again, because we looked at the downtown and we felt that there was plenty of available retail places for new businesses to come in, and not enough residential. So, and they agreed with us. So that's why we did all apartments.
Oh, that's really interesting. I actually have never thought about that, but that does make sense because usually the first floor of the downtown areas of most towns are commercial property. And so are they zoned differently as well? How does that work?
Well, we did have to get a variance because typically in the business district of a city, the first floor is retail, is required to be retail.
Okay.
So there's a process that you go through that you get a variance to allow you to do that, which is what we did.
Okay. One of the things that I've also noticed with Ironmen properties, with the kind of properties you put up, you really do put a lot of effort into making things nice.
Yeah, well, appreciate the compliment. I again, that kind of back to finding the right partner. I think Joe and I both want to provide. That's that's part of our mission statement, is to provide good quality housing for our residents. And we get excited about making our places look really good. Because it's just, we like that. I think anytime you walk into a really nice apartment, that means something. That you feel good about that. So it's more about that than it is about, we could make an extra $20 a month or on rent if we didn't include granite countertops, for example, or if we didn't include some of the nicer light fixtures that we put in. I think I speak for Joe as well, but I think we both would want to drive past a property and feel like that we did the best that we could for that property.
So with the Anvil 38, is
Yep.
that correct? What's that project looking like as far as, it's 300 plus apartments, you said?
307, correct.
Yeah, how do you manage, well, how does the project planning for that, something like that work? Is that the biggest project you guys have had till date?
Yes.
So is that any different from the previous ones? Because Frankfurt was 74 units. Okay, so from that to 300, is there, what's the gap look like there as far as the planning that goes around that?
Well, for that particular project, and we have not finalized the decision. We're still, if you will, crunching the numbers, but that might be in 2 phases. So we might do roughly half of those units in phase 1, and that's kind of the pros of that. The benefit of doing that is you can get off the ground. Number one, it's half the price almost, and then you can get residents in. You can start to get that locomotive running, get that wheel turning, and get some cash coming in from the rents and stuff, and then you do the second half, or phase 2. So there's a lot of advantages of doing that, but there's also a lot of disadvantages. The cost is higher because it's 2 separate projects. All your plans are now, with the assumption that it's two separate projects, you're typically dealing with two different financing packages. So there's a lot of challenges with doing two phases as well. But that's kind of where we're at, is deciding on, do we do it as one project or do we do it as two separate projects?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and as far as all the financing, to someone who has no idea or who's just getting into real estate, what are some things that you would tell them to expect? What are some things that they ought to be aware of?
Well, I can very easily think back to that first property that we bought. It was the first time we bought one, and I think no different than the person that runs the marathon. They didn't start one day just running a marathon. Their first big race was maybe a 5K, right? And then they did that, and then they ran a 10K, and then they got up to a half marathon, and so it's just it's learning. It's you when you go to the bank for your first property, the bank is going to really scrutinize you. They're going to make sure that they feel like they're going to get their money back from the project. And then the next time you're doing a deal, you probably will go back to the same bank because you have a relationship with them. And that bank was going to go, well, yeah, he's been good to us. He's made all of his payments, and yeah, we'll do another deal with you. So Ashish, it's very similar in that respect, that over the years you build relationships with various vendors. It's even down to the electrician that's going to work on the project. They want to make sure that they're doing. This is going to take a lot of their time to do a project. They want to make sure that they're going to get paid as well. They want to make sure that they're doing a project that their name is going to be on it. So, is it something that they want to do? And then on the ownership side, do we have confidence that electrician is going to do the job on time and in budget? And it's just growing in the business over the years, all the way back to buying that first property.
Okay, so what's the future for Ironmen Properties look like beyond the next project?
Well, I think right now because it certainly comes up. I mean, one of the fun things that Joe and I, well, at least for me, I think Joe enjoys it too, but is always to dream, right? Like, what are some things that we can do? We enjoy doing what we do on a daily basis, and that's to build really good quality housing for those that decide and choose to live in our properties. That's fun. But at the same time, there are other things that are equally, if not more important. We're both husbands, we're both fathers, we both are active in our church, and there's a lot of things that we can spend our time on, and it's choosing those things that we value. And yes, while building good quality housing is important, there are other things that are just as, if not important. So I think for what does the future of Ironmen Properties look like, we'll Lord willing, we'll keep building housing as long as we're able to, and as long as we're having fun. I think that's when it's no longer fun, I don't want to do it anymore if it's not fun. So right now it's fun.
Well, that's good. That's good. So beyond the business side of this, what are some of the other hobbies that you have?
Well, as you know, I absolutely love Tesla. I drank the Tesla Kool-Aid, or the Elon Musk Kool-Aid, whatever you want to call it, a few years ago. I think my engineering background, my the techie side of me, I read his autobiography. It's a fascinating story. I had no idea who Elon Musk even was, and a good friend of mine had listened to the audiobook of his autobiography and just really encouraged me to read it, and so I did. And this was, 4 years ago or 5 years ago or so, and I've just been, it's been exciting to watch that ride, to watch that company, and of course with SpaceX or the Boring Company. It's just a fascinating individual, and just dreaming, if you will, of owning one of those cars, and then learning everything about it. And then what's been really neat too is to see some young adults, young people that know more about these cars than I do, and I have one, and it's neat to see that generation just really grasping, and it's so fun to, Elon Musk calls it the most fun thing you'll ever own. Not just the most fun car, but the most fun thing. And he's right about it. I mean, when I get an alert on my phone that there's a new software update for my car that's free, they're always free. I mean, it's like Christmas morning. It's like, what new features did I get on my car, right? And so that's been fun to follow, and then to see them do extremely well. For the owner of that company, for Elon, to years ago make a statement that he wanted to build an affordable car, and then just through the headwinds that he had to deal with, but yet just recently really breaking through and then doing extremely well, just with some of the product that they've coming out. So I think I'm very passionate about all things Tesla. So
well, I know I wanted to make sure that we definitely talk about that, because that's, and I share the same enthusiasm for the company as you. I think what the guy is doing is quite incredible, and the fact that he wants to make it affordable, and it goes with his vision for wanting to, I guess, save the planet, and and so there's a lot of exciting things that seem to be coming from the company, and that's one of the things I've also heard is just with the updates, they seem to have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
They've got some good stories behind them. In fact, I've been on this kick for the last couple of weeks, looking at this guy who repairs Teslas. His name's Rich Rebuilds. Fascinating YouTube channel. And his journey started because he wanted to repair a salvaged Tesla, and Tesla didn't support that at that time. And so he just documented the entire journey, and it's just fascinating because that's his entire channel now, is just buying these Teslas that aren't supported by Tesla and rebuilding them. And he dogs on Tesla a lot, but at the same time, he has a lot of respect for the engineering of the car, and just the value that the car has. And I think, he mentions tons of times the same concept is you just never get over how fun these cars are. So talk to me about you purchasing your first Tesla. How was that from having a traditional car?
Yeah, wow. So the Dave Ramsey and me refused to buy a new one. So I had to, and the Dave Ramsey also forced me to make sure I could pay for it. No car loans. So that took a while to get that part figured out. But I found a guy in Washington D.C. that had his car for a few months, and he wanted a Model X, which is the one with the Falcon wing doors. And so he was selling his in order to buy a Model X. And so, buying that kind of a car in a state, states away, that I had never done that before. So, and the guy was very gracious. He understood. There was a lot of FaceTime video, him out in his driveway with the car. Me looking over the car in detail, and then he had a loan on it, so we had to figure out those logistics, is how do we get that figured out. But in the end, I'd bought a one-way ticket to Washington D.C., and he picked me up at the airport in the car, and then I drove it, of course, and we drove it around, and I got under the car, looked at, there's no engine really to look at, so that was pretty easy. But, once I got comfortable with it, I called my bank, we wired the funds, and then we drove to the BMV there in Virginia. And once the bank had released the title to the BMV, they gave me a I didn't want to get it plated in Virginia. So I got a very like a 3-day license plate, if you will, to allow me enough time to drive it back to Lafayette and go get it plated here. So,
how was that drive?
It was wild because not only was it like a 16-hour drive, but that was the first time I got to learn about how to stop and charge the car. There's no gas stations, and the car is incredibly smart in telling you where to stop. Tesla's got an amazing network. That's why I don't understand how any other car manufacturer is going to catch up anytime soon, because if you want to go anywhere, Tesla makes it so easy. I was able to sleep while the car charged a few times. So pulled into a charging station, and I have one of the smallest batteries in my car, and it's also an older car, so it doesn't charge as fast as they do now. So I got to learn how all that whole process. But it's not a very steep learning. Or I mean, it's a steep. Well, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It didn't take long to figure things out. You just get used to it driving a little differently. If you're going long distances and you got to get there really fast, you're taking a gas car because you're going to stop. Now, if that's not as much of a concern, if you say, hey, we're going to have to stop to eat lunch anyway, then definitely. And plus, autopilot is awesome.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. That's one that I remember when you went down to Frankfurt once, I came with you, and that's actually my first experience in a Tesla. And the autopilot, what are some of the advantages and the misconceptions that people have about it?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the misconceptions about it is, some people, you hear the word autopilot and you think that it's autopilot like 100%. Well, that's not the case at all. It does very well at staying in a lane, on the highway especially. It'll stay in the lane. It'll slow down if there's a car in front of it. It'll speed up to whatever you've set the speedometer, the cruise control, if you will, to. But it also does it in town. It does a very good job of staying in the lane in town. And so when I hop on in Lafayette, if I hop on State Road 26, and if I have to go a couple of miles before I have to turn off of State Road 26, I can put it in autopilot and it'll drive itself because it's in the same lane. It's not having to turn anywhere. It will not stop today, although they're saying it'll be pretty close, but today it does not stop at traffic lights. But if there is a car stopped at a traffic light in front of you, then yes, then it'll stop. But you learn what it can do and what it can't do pretty quickly, and then it also, for me, I trust the car. I mean, maybe I trust it too much. I don't know, but I know what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So I'm able to. You don't take your eyes off the road. You don't. Obviously, you don't sleep. The car won't let you. The car makes you touch the steering wheel every 30 seconds or so. It wants to make sure you're paying attention. And then, so that the misconception would be that it's fully automatic when it's not. But it's so far ahead of everybody else that from a safety standpoint, if I didn't have autopilot, and I've got family members and friends that, when they're driving, that you take your eyes off this wheel for a second and you're hitting the rumble strips on the highway, and you recognize that and you pull back in your lane and stuff. Well, when all that goes away, I mean, it is a much safer vehicle. So, and Tesla has multiple reports about accidents per million miles, how many accidents are without autopilot versus with autopilot, and I don't want to say it's half, but it's significantly less with autopilot.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I really want to purchase one. Well, obviously, with all the fun things involved, but it's also just the safety aspect of it. I've just heard so many good things about it, and I mean, isn't it true? Like the top 5 cars or the top 3 cars, the safest cars are all Teslas, right? And so from that aspect, just from that standpoint, it just seems like a good thing just to have at some point. But also, I don't know where I was reading an article somewhere just talking about how the batteries are so incredibly efficient at charging and discharging that they're going to last you 300,000, 400,000 miles with only, I mean, a very minor drop in mileage.
Yeah, so my car, brand new, had a rated range of 259 miles. That was in late 2016. So here we are in February of 2020, and when I fully charge my car now, I might hit 240 miles, probably like 239, 238. So I've lost 20 miles of range, which is not quite 10% in 3.5 years and I have just shy of 70,000 miles.
Okay.
So in 70,000 miles, I've lost less than 10% range.
Okay, and they've updated those batteries quite significantly because
Yes,
the
they
newer
have.
cars are rated for, I mean, you could probably double that and that's all you'd lose.
Yeah, new Model S right now. If you go to their website today, it'll show you 390 miles.
Oh, wow. So any plans to upgrade?
Not to upgrade mine, but we are expecting our next Tesla soon. So
Oh, nice. Which one is it?
the Model Y.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't started that.
No.
They haven't put that in production yet, have they?
No, there's a lot of sightings, if you will. So they feel that it's pretty imminent. So
Okay.
and that's to replace my wife's SUV.
Yeah, and I mean, and they're really reasonable now, aren't they? They're not absurd in
No.
cost anymore, are they?
No.
And from what I know, the features on the newer ones are probably going to outdo the features on the Tesla you have, which is a Model S, which is one of the nicer ones when they first came out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I really like mine. I like the looks of it. And then, but the Model Y, for the range, just for that added range, the Model Y is rated 315 miles of range.
Wow.
So,
Oh, wow, that is quite good.
yeah.
And is it a performance model? Or is that not the
No,
not the
no.
performance, the long range?
That is the long range.
That is the long range.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, something you mentioned earlier with their charging networks. That's also one that I've thought of is no one else can compete with that. They're
Right.
just everywhere. I mean, the fact that Meyer and Lafayette has one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure there's like tons of places in Lafayette and one of your apartments
Yeah.
have them too, right?
Yeah, in Frankfurt, we were able to work with Tesla, and Tesla was incredibly gracious. They provided us with 6 charging stations, 4 Teslas, and actually even 2 generic charging stations.
Wow.
And not only did they provide those to us, but they also paid to install them, which blew me away that they would do that. But that's how how much they value getting as many chargers out there as possible, so that. There's lots of apps. The one I use is called PlugShare, which is where everybody can add. Like if I could add to that program, if I find a charging station somewhere that's not on the program, I can go in and add it. Crowdsourcing, maybe is that what it's called? But so that will show you every charging network, and you can filter it. Like if you have a certain car that only accepts a certain kind of charger, you could do that. But it makes it super easy to find a place to charge.
So you can charge your Teslas at non-Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah,
I guess that
Tesla
makes
gives
sense.
you an adapter for just about any charger out there. So you just plug the adapter into the cable and plug it into your car.
I didn't know that. Oh, that's fascinating. So do you have free supercharging?
On mine, I do, yes. That's why I'll be hanging on to it.
Oh, that's one of those things. So I've heard that it doesn't stick with the
Sticks with the car.
sticks with the car. Yeah. So, but if you sell the car, they don't get it.
Mine they do, but they change the rules after mine, so that there are, that's the one thing about Tesla is they don't have model years. Okay, you just have to know what your Tesla has and what it doesn't have, and Tesla can tell you. They print out a report that'll tell you all the features that your car has, but if you don't want to wait around for the next model year, because they don't do model years, and they change so frequently that you'll be waiting forever, because there's always going to be something coming out.
Yeah. So I guess your Model Y doesn't have.
Free supercharging? No, it doesn't. So that's okay. It'll go a lot farther. And when it costs $8 to fill up, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. And so what are your thoughts on the Cybertruck?
Oh, I have one ordered. I love it. I think, well, I love it now. When I was like a lot of people, when it first came out, I thought Elon it was gone. It was done. I was like, sell the stock. And this is crazy. And then after looking at it for a little while, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then a little later, it's like, wow, that really is pretty sharp. And then what? Only $100 to put one on order, fully refundable? Sure. So, and then we'll see.
The concept of it's pretty cool. That's kind of what sold it to me, was just how, it's just a lot different than most trucks that are made, the whole exoskeleton concept. And the looks of it are quite bizarre, but I can understand, it got them good marketing, good PR. And I accidentally put in 2 pre-orders because my first one I thought didn't go through, so I went back, and you're not supposed to do that, and so I refreshed the page, and so I got 2 emails. So I gotta figure out how to give probably both of them away, because there's no reason for me to have one right now, and it's probably not financially a very wise decision.
You have 2 years to figure it out.
Exactly. And that's what I thought when they said late 2021. I was like, I could probably figure something out with that, but I don't know if they allow you to sell your position, so I don't know. I might try to find a buyer for that.
There you go.
Anything else that we've not talked about that you think, hey, this is something cool that is happening with Ironmen Properties, and I want to share that?
I think that number one, thank you for having me on your show, Ashish. It's good to. I really like what you're doing. Your goal is to get a lot of stories put together. I think that's really neat, because I've already watched a few of them, and I've learned a lot. So hopefully this will help somebody that maybe is on the fence about real estate, that maybe through this might push them over the edge to take that first step. And certainly I am, if someone has any further questions, I'd be happy to talk to them about that as well. I think the more I've done this, the more I've appreciated those who have helped me along the way and have mentored me. I've got a number of people that did that to help me get past some of those fears early on. And I'm very thankful for that. So, but thank you for doing this.
Well, I appreciate it. So what is the best way that people who are interested to reaching out for advice, or people who are interested for you to buy some property or develop something for them?
Well, our website is ironmenproperties.com, and you can, under the About page, you can find me there along with my personal cell phone number and email address, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Well, that sounds great. Thanks for coming on again.
You're very welcome.
I want to thank you for checking out the Storyventure experience. I'm really excited to sit down with more people. If you think you have a cool story to tell and want to be on the podcast, go to growwithstory.com/podcast and fill out your contact information. I am really excited to talk to more people, tell more incredible stories. So let's keep this going.